Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for February 8th, 2022. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat feature, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature to let us know that you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. We're also streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start, as we usually do, by recapping last week's weekly tittle, which was called Pick the Low-Hanging Fruit. The assignment was to identify one easy win to get yourself out of a stuck state, a specific location, a limited focus, a clear deadline, or an ideal vision to help you shift into motion. We'd love to hear from our participants who are with us live in Zoom and on Facebook who tried our low-hanging fruit picking exercise this week. Please let us know in the comments. I feel like I did something that I wanted to mention that fit in this
Samudra
category.
Raised her hand. Samudra.
Oh, wonderful. Go ahead, Samudra.
I shredded half my dissertation.
Woo!
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
A whole box of note cards. There's a box of note cards left to do, and what I wrote in 1993. I called a friend I hadn't talked to in years, and she said, "These stories you're telling me are hilarious. You've got to write them." And I said, "Yeah." And there's that dissertation. She's sitting there. She said, "Samudra, nobody wants to read your dissertation because it's a dissertation." And everyone will laugh at these stories. I went right.
There you go. Zip. How does it feel?
About anything weird.
It feels weird.
Weird. I'm still adjusting emotionally. It's a change in your perception of yourself, you know?
Yeah.
A change in how you define yourself. I'm the person who shredded my dissertation, which actually ceased to mean anything to me when Steve N got one. So too bad. You know?
There you go. Well, good. Congratulations on getting that done. And I hope you're able to get it to a level of completion that you feel comfortable with. So good on you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a flash forward to this week's tittle, to one of our suggestions from this week's tittle. We'll share that later, but that's just a teaser.
Okay.
Connie said, "I managed to empty a few drawers and reassign their use." Rowan said, "This is not really related to the tittle, but Rowan said, I am the ghost of Gayle's economic past and working on a huge budget spreadsheet while listening."
Oh, that's fun.
Naomi said, "I haven't managed to do any homework, but I have begun to emerge from the January paralysis with my to-do list." And wasn't getting out of your January paralysis our suggestion for a few weeks ago? So, hey, that's fine.
Right. Whenever you get there is fine. And thank goodness you're rolling along again. That's wonderful.
M said, "Envisioning space as I would like it helped. I was finally able to weed, not by making decisions about whether to donate, sell, put away, or toss, but simply by recognizing that an item was not serving me or in my way. Those items all went to a big box, stuff for later decisions. This risks having piles of stuff in the way, but the upside is that the box of stuff is looking like junk, so might be easy to part with."
There you go. Just don't make it so big that you can't actually pick up the box.
Right.
That's the biggest issue is, if you can't carry it, it will never get out. So you may have to, for transportation, you may have to bag that stuff into smaller containers and move it along that way.
Lee said, for the tittle, "Weeding the neglected back and front yard. Can't get any lower than that. It's just hard to get up."
Right. Once you're down there, then what happens?
If your low-hanging fruit is actually on the ground.
Good job. There you go.
Linda said, "Broke down a big project into doable bite-sized pieces."
Yeah,
recovering from COVID, the lack of energy is real, y'all, but breaking stuff into little steps helps get something done.
absolutely. Planning is still working. And that is, it's orienting it in your mind to what you need to do next. And it's helping you decide which steps to take first. And, you'll tackle the list just like you would normally. You're just going to tackle it slower because of your energy level. And that's fine.
And another Linda, different Linda, Pennsylvania Linda said, low hanging fruit. After a major clothing clear out a while ago, this week, I went around to all the closets and got rid of a ton of unneeded hangers.
Oh, there you go. Exactly. Like when you go through, it's like, what am I going to do with 14 linear feet of empty hangers? They get in the way just like anything else. So good for you. That was a good one.
Marilyn reports that she cleaned out the china closet and let some things go. Also sorted and decluttered photos, 46 plus years worth. Ooh.
Oh my God, that was a big project. Good job. That seems like a very energetic jump in your work. Photos, man. If you can face the photos, you're doing great.
On the subject of low hanging fruit, Connie added, quoting Irma Bombeck, while I am tying my shoes, I look around to see what else I can do while I'm down here.
I miss Irma Bombeck. She was so funny.
Emily Sue said, I got rid of a lot of garbage and recycling, including 5 medium-sized garbage bags of shredded papers.
There you go. Yeah.
Joyce said, I finally put my creche away and am officially decorated for Epiphany. I'd post before after, but can't figure out how to do that. Of course, my overloaded tickler file is still in one of my after photos.
It'll be another project, right? That's another paper project you can deal with.
Yes.
That's okay. One thing at a time, right? And you did something and we are proud of you. That is awesome.
Christine, who's with us on Facebook, said, my low-hanging fruit was to throw out at least one expired thing a day from my pantry, toiletries, or makeup.
Ooh, good. I wonder how many days she's done it. That's a good thing. Then you're only doing it one at a time, right? But still, eventually you'll get all the way through the pantry and you'll get all the way through your makeup. And won't that be a great thing?
And Peggy said, I babysit my granddaughter 2 days a week. I had a drawer of bottles, bibs, etc. Could never find what I wanted. I took out everything I don't use anymore and sent it back with mom and dad. I can find things now.
Yay. And that affected your daily life because you're babysitting and you are actively getting in that drawer all the time. So good on you. That was a good thing to do. And it directly benefited you. And that was the point.
And finally, Susan said, been decluttering food by eating it and using cookbooks that have been forgotten about.
There you go. That's the way to do it. You don't have to waste the food if you actually cook with it, right? So good job.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. You guys did great. You totally embraced the feeling of the tittle and went for it. That's awesome.
I always feel like it's a big win to use food that was getting dangerously close to the expiration date or leftovers, if we polish off the last of the leftovers of something, that just feels like finding money on the street.
Right. Before you have to throw the leftovers in the trash. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, we should get to our main topic because we have a lot to say about it.
Yeah.
More often than not, the stories that people who struggle with clutter tell start with the words, I feel. Even emotions that seem to have little clear connection to our stuff can muddle our decision-making and impede our progress. Today, we're going to examine negative feelings that complicate decluttering and try to offer encouragement to put positive emotions to work in the process instead.
This is where we insert our typical disclaimer about we are not mental health professionals. We're not trained in mental health profession. And so this is all of our opinions about these feelings and what they do and what they mean. I'm talking about these feelings from my perspective of client interaction that I've had over the years. And so I am not mentally diagnosing anything or trying to give you any mental health advice other than to talk about your feelings. Okay.
We're not attempting to diagnose or treat your mental
issues, right? Okay. So when a potential client contacts me for the first time, I ask them to tell me their story. And what made them decide to call an organizer? What are they trying to work on? And I ask that question because it gets them to focus on exactly what they want to get done. Then they tell me, I want to get fill in the blank organized, but I feel fill in the blank. A big part of what I do as an organizer is listen to all the clients' feelings that come up when they start thinking about getting organized. Sometimes the feelings kick in before any organizing has even started. And sometimes the feelings appear when they start opening the boxes or cabinets and find their mother's favorite painting or vase or old journal. Mostly having the feelings makes them stop the process and walk away. Depending on how strong the response is, the feelings keep them from going back to the organizing for some time, if ever. Basically, having strong emotional response to the process of organizing stops people from helping themselves and their families to a better living situation. And we want to help you reach your goal of an organized space. So we're going to talk about the emotions that come up as part of this process and do our best to reframe it in a more positive way. Hopefully a way that lets you get going again. So first up, the feelings that appear. The first one on my list is, I feel overwhelmed. This emotion commonly comes up before the job is even started. When faced with a large job and many hours of work or a very overstuffed space, clients say, I feel overwhelmed and I don't know where to start. When the volume looks big or the layout of the mess is very chaotic, or there are several problems with the job that you're not sure how to solve, getting overwhelmed can show up in a hurry. Next feeling on my list is, I feel guilty. When I ask guilty about what, the answer is varied. Guilty for not being able to clear this up themselves. Guilty for leaving this mess for their kids to clean up. Guilty for thinking about giving away family items. Guilty for not being able to face it. Like I said, guilt covers a lot of territory. Another emotion that comes up is, I feel ashamed. I hear this one a lot. Clients feel ashamed that they've let it get so bad, and so they can't have their friends and family over. This feeling also reflects a lot of mental chatter in their heads from parents or spouses. They can hear their mom or dad being disappointed or upset about the state of the home. Disappointed parents triggers a lot of shame, and it usually reflects the belief that it's all their fault. When a client feels responsible for the mess, then they feel a lot of shame.
That shame also can lead to loneliness and isolation if that's the direction you go. You shut down your social activities.
Stop sharing.
You stop letting anyone come through the front door.
Yeah. And it definitely leads to that level of isolation for sure. The next one on the list is, I feel judged. In partnership with shame, clients feel judged when someone is actively yelling at them about it or sending blame their way. Usually they're also judging themselves and internalizing the message coming from their partner. Clients report this one a lot. I feel sad. This one is usually about a loss of some kind. A client feels sad over the loss of a loved one, a family or friend, or they're sad over a divorce or about getting fired or retiring. They might feel sad about having to move away from a long familiar place, or sad because their kids have grown and they become empty nesters. It could be because of a disaster, like a flood or a hurricane or a fire that destroyed a lot of their belongings. A lot of change in life comes with the loss of one thing to make space for another thing. Even when the change is good, the loss still makes you sad. And there's always stuff that reflects those losses. The last one I came up with today is, I feel angry. Sometimes the sad is anger instead, especially around divorce or job loss. The items in the pile remind a client of something they've lost or given up that they're angry about having to lose. Maybe the flood or hurricane or fire caused such complete destruction that the only emotion that makes sense is to be angry at the situation. This is a hard list to hear, isn't it? I'm sure you all recognize yourself somewhere on that list of negative emotions that come up when you start decluttering. If you're currently stuck on one of these emotions, then let's see if we can't offer you some ways to cope and turn it around. So how do you honor these feelings and then step around them? So let's first talk about feeling overwhelmed. You're probably imagining trying to deal with it all at once, everything simultaneously. I will say this again. You can't declutter the whole house simultaneously. You only have to work on one part at a time. Sure, the job is big and the project can't be done over one day and you'll be at it for a while. But it's still a step-by-step process and you're doing it one step at a time. If you feel overwhelmed because you don't know how to do it, I'll say this: you don't have to know how to do all of it. You can work on the parts you can figure out now while you look for answers to the parts that you don't know how to handle yet. Don't let those pieces of the project that you don't have the solution to prevent you from doing other parts that you do know how to do. In the meantime, you can be doing the research, you can be asking the questions, you can be calling your friends and asking for advice, and you can try to be gathering support and details that you need to move the pieces that you feel inadequate to solve alone. You can be reaching out for support about that.
I think it's important to reiterate a phrase you used as you were introducing that particular piece, which is honor the emotions, but step around them. That's a great visual to keep in the back of your head. When I find myself standing face to face with this challenge, I do not have to go butt my head up against it. I can step around it. There's something else I can do. There's a piece of it. There's a completely unrelated thing and that I can do instead.
Yeah, because I don't want you to think that we're telling you stop having these emotions. We're not, because I recognize that they are absolutely real, and depending on how strong you feel them, debilitating to the point of being frozen.
Incapacitating.
Yeah. Exactly. And we want you to know that you can have those feelings and you can still do something else to be in motion to try to get around the problem, and not tell you that you can't have those emotions or they're not appropriate, because you know that they are and you know that you're having them. So you need to have them and process them. And we're just trying to help you think about ways to continue to move towards your goals, even though you have feelings that are getting in the way. What if you're feeling guilty? If you're one of those people that's feeling guilty, if the guilt is about your lack of action, the solution is to get in action, no matter how small. Being in motion, working on part of it, means eventually you'll get done and you can give up on feeling guilty. If the guilt is about letting go of family things, it's important to remember that giving up the item doesn't give up the memory of your loved one along with it. It's not reasonable to expect to hold and live with many generations of stuff like a pyramid scheme. Each generation passing goods to the next, and the pile gets bigger every time it changes hands. Eventually, some descendant will be buried in all that family stuff. So it's better to think of processing the family belongings as curating a collection to hang in a gallery. What can you honor and incorporate into your family narrative, your present family narrative? And it's worth the effort to do that part. And the rest needs to be passed to another family to honor it next. It doesn't have to be someone in your family. It can be moved on to the next family. And if you can find the pieces that resonate the most with you and that you feel great honor about and incorporate into your decor or your pictures or your artwork or however you honor those pieces, then you can tell the story around it. You can feel like it's a part of your current family and that you're paying homage to that item and honoring your family member. And the shift here is to say, I can honor the special pieces and not have to honor 100% of the collection. That it's enough to find the lovely pieces that you like the most and put all of your reverence and care and honor into those things. And that is then you remembering and honoring the previous generations. And the rest of the bulk can go on to become part of someone else's family story. And you will not have slighted your relatives in any way if you can do that. If you're feeling ashamed, we can talk about that one. Shame is such a debilitating emotion. It may be that your parents are or would have been disappointed in your space, but so what? Sitting in the shame just stops you from doing anything. Getting in action is the surest way to get past shame. Shame is a feeling about what is and what was. Action is about what will be. So if your mind in your mind, tell your parents to keep their opinions to themselves and go about your business of your house so you can be proud of yourself for getting the project going. If you're feeling judged, again, this is another acidic emotion. Judgment comes from those around you, only amplifies what you already feel yourself. They're sending you the message that you are already telling yourself anyway. If you can, I'd ask the person actively telling you their judgment to let it rest. Their comments are not helping you, get on with it. Tell yourself that their judgment is not about you, but about them and how they feel in the space. That person is reflecting what feels uncomfortable to them. They're just doing it in a destructive manner. Remind yourself that working towards improvement in the space will help reduce their stress and then their judgment. And in the meantime, remember that the judgment isn't really about you.
Maria actually said, overwhelmed and judged, mostly self-judgment though. And sometimes the judgment is projection, I think. You know, you're all wrapped up in the mess you're trying to deal with. Mm-hmm. And your spouse or partner or parent or visitor, whatever,
or adult children
looks at you a certain way, and suddenly you're off and running on, oh no, they're judging me and I'm failing. I'm coming up short.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, that is the surest way to complete shutdown and complete meltdown. And I think having a judgment about yourself just means that you need to ramp up your self-care. We all know that we feel judgment about ourselves and what we do regularly. It's part of our lives that we judge ourselves as falling short and failing. But you have enough people out there in the world judging your life that you can't do anything about. So you might as well try to change your own mental judgment about yourself. You can control how you think about yourself, and trying to talk in a more loving manner, in a more supportive manner, in a manner that is deemed self-care instead of self-destructive can only be helpful to you. And who knows how well you'll do at it or how much you'll be able to change, but anything that you can do to make some of that burden not be generated by your own mental thinking will be helpful to you. It'll make it easier for you to live in the world. We can't affect how other people judge us. We try all the time and we can't really do anything about it. And so how you feel about yourself and how you judge yourself is something that you can try to interact with and see if you can't give yourself a break. Acknowledge that you're doing the best that you can. Think about how you can do it differently so that you don't feel as much like you're failing. This is a whole nother topic about self-care and self-talk and self-imaging. But I just want to say all of the feelings that you feel about yourself that are negative and judgmental are definitely going to freeze you in place. And anything that you can do to change that mental chatter will help you feel better and feel able to move forward. The end. We'll cover that in another. We can cover that in another episode, right?
The end of that bullet point.
Yeah, right. The end of that bullet point. Okay. So the next emotion, feeling sad, is one that we have to face a lot. Processing takes a lot of time, and it uses a lot of energy. So remember that you may not be able to make big progress, but you can work on small pieces while you're sad. And this is the perfect time to ask for help. Having someone there with you while you go through things that bring up sadness helps, because you can tell stories and get active support. My clients usually report it wasn't as bad as they thought it would be when we go through something, because they assumed would make them feel terrible, sad when they started it. most of the time people have a box in the corner or a part of the closet, or they have a stack of something that's related to the parent that died, the spouse that died, the big ones that trigger the big feelings of sadness and loss. And they're afraid to go deal with those because they're afraid to be overwhelmed with the sadness. And it's usually not as hard as you think. And you don't have to do all the pieces at once. You can pull a small part of the box out and process that, have feelings about it, and still be processing it a little bit at a time and sending things on or putting things away or giving things away, whatever you need to do there, and still be making progress. And so, especially when you've lost someone, but the parent or the spouse, those are super important losses. And it does require a lot of mental energy to absorb that loss, to process that loss. And so expecting yourself to be madly organizing the house while you're in that space is asking a lot of yourself. And so I would make more space here for doing small pieces and asking for help to let you make little small incremental steps towards dealing with what you think you need to deal with while you're giving a whole lot of your mental energy to processing the loss. If you're feeling angry, angry is set off by triggers and reminders. Dealing with the stuff that reminds you what you're angry about removes those reminders. So letting some stuff go helps to let some of the anger go too. I'm reminded of my client who got divorced a decade ago, and she still has all this paperwork. There was apparently an investigation at the time, and she was gathering data to prove infidelity. And there was all kinds of, meeting notes from the attorneys, and there's all kinds of paperwork and copies of credit card statements showing he spent money on other women. And there's all this stuff that, when she looks at it, makes her really unhappy. And
there's no further. She has no further plans. There's going to be no further legal proceedings. It's done.
Yeah. The divorce is complete.
Long since over and done with.
Long been. And that stack of stuff still makes her really angry. And I'm thinking, that's a good reason to get rid of it. If it's making you angry, why not let it go? Clearly you haven't forgotten about the process and what made you unhappy and the things that you went through to get divorced. It's not like throwing that paper out is going to lose your memories for you, but the active triggering by those pieces of paper and that stack, the credit card statement and all the investigative work, and like, who needs to look at that stuff and be rewound up about it? And so letting some of those things go, I'm hoping I did get to shrink the collection a little bit for her. And I'm hoping that, someday she'll stick it all in the fireplace and burn it or something. Like, I think there'd be a whole lot of relief for her if she could let it go. I think that if there's stuff about this organizing that makes you feel angry, you got fired from a job and you didn't feel like you deserved it, and it was really made you crazy, having the stuff that you brought home from that job processed and donated or absorbed into your house or whatever, and not sitting over there as a collection in the corner of things from the job I got fired from, brings you some relief. And that's what we're hoping for. I always want to remind you that you can do something, however small, and action is the cure for bad feelings. Just making some movement will give you relief and help you keep going. Those actions help you fake it till you make it, as the saying goes, and we're here to help you get there.
Maybe not cure, treatment.
Treatment. Right, is helpful
Connie,
for dealing with.
Connie asked, what about shame regarding wasted money on stuff we hardly used?
That's a good one. And I think this is one of those. So my story about around this was, I was at a speaking engagement. The lady raised her hand and she said, I went shopping for a cabinet unit that was supposed to hold the TV, and it had all the bookshelves and stuff. It was this big entertainment center. And it cost $2,000. I convinced my husband to buy it, and then I got it home and I hate it. And I look at it every night and I hate it. And I'm sorry that I bought it and it was a mistake and it cost me $2,000. And oh my God. And I can't tell my husband because he will be so mad. And like, oh my God. So instead, she is sitting there with the thing, looking at it every night and being poked and feeling bad every night to avoid having to tell her husband that it was a mistake. And I think ultimately, if you imagine the amount of money that you wasted, if you imagine what you would have done with it instead, maybe you would have gone out to restaurants more. Maybe you would have bought a gift for a friend. Maybe you would have gone on a vacation. Okay. And maybe the vacation would have been terrible. Maybe something would have gone wrong. Maybe the thing that you would have bought instead wouldn't have made you happy. Ultimately, it's better to think of that money as water under the bridge. You got something out of it. The item didn't get used, but you still had the shopping experience. Maybe it's just, what's the word I'm looking for? It's sunk cost, right? The money's already been spent. You're not going to get it back. And it's in the past. So you can resolve to do better in the future. And you can imagine that money that you spent, instead of benefiting you, is going to go benefit someone else that you donate to. And if you think about it as you're sending a gift down the river to someone else, something that is never been used or low use that goes on to someone else, imagine that they find it and feel like they got a steal. Like they go to the thrift store and they find the object and they pay a fraction of what you had to pay for it, so that ultimately you're giving them a wonderful gift that they wouldn't have been able to buy without your donation. And imagine how that money spent will enrich someone else down the road. So even if you didn't use it, if you wasted it, you can think of it as sending that money that you spent down to benefit someone else. So it's not really wasted, it's gifted instead. And yes, I know that not 100% of things that you get donated will end up benefiting somebody down the road, but a lot of it will. And if you can think of it as you spent the money and now you're gifting it down the road, then someone else can be the recipient of your largesse. And you'll be making somebody happy. You've been in a thrift store and you found something that was $4 that was an original, never been used, looked beautiful. Isn't this fabulous? I'm so excited. Look at this great deal. I have people that shop in thrift stores all the time and they love saying, I got this shirt and it only cost me $3. I found this painting and it only cost me $15. And there's a lot of thrill for the people on the receiving end. And so just consider that you are contributing to their thrill by sending your unused stuff down the road.
Well,
hope that helps.
Yeah, maybe take a moment, just allow yourself to feel generous instead of shameful.
Yeah, like you're just being super, super generous. You're just like sending Christmas in July down the road. Every time you donate, you're creating a Christmas pile for somebody else on the other end.
Okay, M says, my stuff makes me feel safe. Most of the significant people in my life are gone, but my stuff stays. I guess the follow-up question to that, M, if you're still with us, yeah, you are, is there a downside? Is there a negative? You're struggling, you're still struggling, you have too much. Is that not true? I hope M will pipe back in on that.
Okay.
Linda said, I like this one. I try to gently set the emotional burden down and then take a small step or two forward away from it.
I think that's a great way to look at it. And it allows you to keep making those little steps in forward motion. This is all about forward motion, people, right?
And Joyce said, step around the emotions while honoring them sure is an improvement over my clutter blindness and continually stepping around actual clutter.
Oh, good point. Good job. Exactly. And won't it be exciting when you realize that you've cleared something and you don't have to step around something in your physical space anymore?
Maureen said, I think you just answered my question. I have many dresses, shoes, new with tags. I've never put on Marketplace and not quite sure how. Maybe I could get $200 max for everything. Is it worth it?
So that's a question for you about how much free time you have and is it worth the effort to you?
How much work will you have to put into making it happen?
Yeah, like you have to go and the thing about resale stores and clothing is that they all have rules about how much you can take and when. And so, if you have 500 pieces you're trying to get rid of, you can't go take them all at once. You're going to have to take them, 6 or 10 or 15 items at a time. And
well, she specifically mentioned Marketplace as
thought
about how to do it.
All of those things would be something one at a time. You have to go create a listing and interact with people about it, and it requires a lot of effort. So if your time is worth getting $200 for the whole collection, fine. And if you have the free time and you're retired and you feel like that'd be a way you want to spend many hours to turn it over, that's cool. You can totally do that. But if it feels like too much work to you to get there for your $200, you might, put a lot up and say, here's a bunch of clothes ranging in sizes from here to here. And I want $200 for the lot. And
you have to take it all. You can't come over and pick through it.
You have to take it all. And, maybe that's how you get to go out of the house. Or you can just take all those clothes to a women's shelter and let them be benefited by you. Then it's one task, one work process where you investigate and find the charity that you feel like you want to donate to. And then you can donate it away. And instead of working many hours for your $200, you can just be donating that $200 to the care of other people that need the help. And that's totally up to you about how you want to spend your time and how much effort you want to put into it. And, some people think doing that kind of listing stuff and getting $2 or $3 per piece and, doing the photographs and making the listings, like they think that's fun, right? And so it's totally up to you about what you think is fun. If that sort of makes your head explode thinking about it, then, then it's not really worth your time. No reason to suffer to make a little money off of them when the whole process of getting the money makes you feel miserable. We don't want to create more misery for you. We want to release you from what is burdening you. And so pick based on what you find entertaining and fun.
Maureen also mentioned, she used the words and not quite sure how. So if that's the stumbling block, then what you might want to do, if you feel like the stuff is worth someone's time to make the effort to sell, is see if you have a friend or family member who's more technically savvy than you are, who would be willing to do it for you or help you with it. Someone who has the time, and hey, you can split the proceeds with them if you have a successful sale.
Right. There's a million ways to go here, but really you just have to decide. Marketplace isn't hard. You just have to learn how to do it. And that means you have to investigate the time to learn how to do it. And so it just depends on how much work you want to do. Well, and how important that is.
And managing the responses can be overwhelming.
Yeah, like you may get a lot of emails.
Don't under any circumstances list anything as free on Facebook Marketplace, or you'll get thousands of responses. And then you'll have to either be okay with ignoring thousands of responses once you've picked the one you're going to deal with, or take on the very large task of telling thousands of people, no, I've already given it away.
Yeah, most of the time people go back in and edit that thing and say this has been sold. Yeah.
Deborah said, I worked with organizing someone's kitchen this past weekend. Ooh. She's one of our wonderful participants who helps other people with their clutter. And she said, I observed how often she used the word shame. It was heartbreaking.
And it's such a tape in our heads, right? Like what you're telling me about is somebody who is stuck in a loop of shame about it. She feels terrible about it. And that's the prevailing emotion that she's having all the time about it. It's great that you were in there helping her, because everything that you can do in there will help reduce the level of shame for her. There'll be a point where you guys get it to some place, and then you can be, wow, isn't this great? You did such a great job. And as someone who's willing to be helpful, reflecting back to them, this is a big improvement. You've done a lot today. This is a whole lot of work that we did today. Look at what a difference we made. Look how much better this looks. Isn't this wonderful? Is the best thing that you can do for somebody who is really trapped in being shamed and feeling like that's the only place that they can sit. You have to actively talk yourself out of that one. It's being ashamed is hard. And you can support her by reflecting what she has accomplished and what she is getting done, and how you guys are making a difference, and reflect it out loud to her so that she hears another voice behind her, besides her own internal monologue of I'm ashamed, I'm ashamed, I'm ashamed.
Tammy said, I burned old critical messages on papers from family in shame in fire New Year's. It felt good. I didn't quite understand all of that, but someone said, bravo for giving it a Viking funeral.
Right.
Oh, that was Deborah.
Yeah. But it's the idea that the pieces of paper that were critical, that she went and burned burned it up and let it go. And that's great.
Yeah.
That's a perfect, way to release it all, right?
Samudra shared, oh, go ahead.
We all judge ourselves harshly enough. We don't need other people's judgments on top. It's a big part of our mental health that we manage to not let other people's feelings attach to us. It's hard.
Another thing I wanted to comment on about Deborah's thing about her working with a friend who and the word shame kept coming up, is paying attention to our own language, the way we describe the problems that we're trying to deal with, and where our stuckness comes from. And that's going to kind of factor into the tittle, which we'll get to very soon.
Yeah.
Samudra shared, it's hard not to compare what I've achieved to what my elders expected me to achieve. Frankly, I prefer my own choices and think they're better, though I hate disappointing.
Right. But the truth is, we're not 15 and living with our parents anymore, right? Like, there's some point where you have to say, this is now my life, and how my parents viewed my life or focused on my life or thought about my life is really not as important as how I feel about my life now. And if you're comfortable with who you are, then you're the one living the life, right? You're the one that needs to be happy. So I think you can thank them for their input in your mind, and thank them for being there and loving you and caring about you. And that their expectations for what you were going to be were just their expectations. And, that ship has definitely sailed, right? Like, their time to mold you and has passed. You are not a teenager anymore. And, sometimes parents don't get what they want.
And you can quietly say to those people in your own mind, one of my favorite lines from The Princess Bride, get used to disappointment.
Your vision for your life is not less than your parents' vision. It's just not your parents' vision. And we're adults, and we can have our own vision for who we want to be. And it is part of being a parent that your kids don't do what you wish they would do, because they're not you. And so you want them to do something, but that doesn't have anything to do with who they are and who they want to be and who they want to do. And so it's part of being a parent that you imagine them while they're little kids about all the things they're going to do, and then they promptly grow up and do something completely different, which is how it works. So we all get to have our own road, and your road is just fine. And I'm sorry that your parents were not able to, validate your road for you, but you're old enough to say, okay, I have claimed my space on the planet and this is what I'm doing and I love it and I'm happy. And that is what we're here for. That is the point of us being on the planet. So thanks, Mom and Dad. And here I am doing what I need to do.
Okay, we're running out of time. We need to get to a few announcements and our weekly tittle.
Mm-hmm.
So let me start by saying, because we haven't said this in a while, if you are with us live on Facebook or Zoom, I want to let you know that we also have a YouTube channel, in case you haven't discovered it, with about 200 videos on lots and lots of organizing topics. Visit cfhou.com/YouTube. And while you're there, if you subscribe to the channel on YouTube and click the bell icon next to the subscribe button, you'll get notifications when we post something new. Let's go ahead and do the teaser for next week. We will be back next week at the usual time. Our subject is going to be the sandwich generation. The sandwich generation describes middle-aged people who have responsibility for both their own children and aging parents while still trying to maybe have a life of their own. In our next episode, we're going to explore the unique clutter challenges facing the sandwich generation and suggest strategies for balancing the competing priorities. Join us February 15th, 2022 for Spread Too Thin, Piled Too High, Clutter in the Sandwich Generation.
Isn't that awesome? And we also need to say that we're going to have a special guest next week for a short time. A friend of mine, another organizer friend of mine, Ellen DeLapp, is going to come and talk about a class that is available about ADHD coming up in March. And so we're going to give her 10 minutes to talk about what the class is and who's going to be offering it. And it'll be very interesting. So we will see her next week as well. Okay, time for the tittle?
Yes.
Okay, so More Than a Feeling is our weekly tittle. And this week's assignment is to unpack the feelings that surround a problematic possession. Identify an item that evokes a negative feeling when you try to make a decision about it, and you can do these things. Don't try to do anything with the object in particular. We just want you to identify the object and then journal about how you feel. Maybe you want to draw or paint something that conveys your feelings about it. Call a trusted friend or family member to talk about why this decision is hard. You can also send it to us. If you ask us, we won't share it. You can send an email to us and tell us about it. The point is to find an object that creates negative emotion and to do a little processing around that emotion. Sometimes you just need to face the emotion, have the emotion, think about it, talk about it, journal about it, draw about it.
Give it a name.
Yeah, give it a name. Oh my gosh, I feel guilty about letting go of this thing. Yeah. And then, talk to your sister about it or talk to your kid about it and just have a little conversation around it. Sometimes you just need to give it a moment of attention and thought and acknowledge that it's present. And hopefully that will give you some ability to release and move forward.
Shine a little sunshine on that emotion.
Right. I think hiding from it and pretending it's not there and not thinking about it just sort of keeps it stuck in the back of your mind. So find one that is really been a problem for you and take the time to process, carve it out of the larger job that is organizing your space and give it some thought, give it some conversation, give it some art, whatever it feels like processing to you, and see if thinking about it and talking about it allows you to expand it and disperse it, and hopefully let you go forward from there with the ability to do something about it. But just worry about, thinking about the feeling for now and trying to process it. And that's the tittle. And I hope that we hear some reports next week about it. Tell us a story about one that you actually did something about.
Okay, I want to circle back to M because I asked the follow-up question and M said, I recognize that there's too much, but feel a sense of panic when I start to get rid of it, like reliving the losses.
that's the nature of the feeling of loss, right? That if you're giving the stuff away, that you're giving the person away. And it is part of absorbing the loss to recognize that the stuff isn't what keeps them in your mind. It is your memories that keep them with you. And so the collection of items all remind you of a person. Let's say you have, 100 items that are related to your mother, for instance. The truth is they all remind you of your mother, but some of them are more rich to you than others. Some of them are more emotionally juicy than others. And so while all of them make you feel and think about your mother, some of them give you more dense memories. And so prioritizing the items that make you feel a whole lot more, give you stronger memories, make you summon the image of your mother and think about interacting with your mother, keeping those things that are more emotionally dense and letting go of some that are less emotionally dense, lets you thin the herd without giving it away. They're not equal losses, right? Like giving away something, that the toothbrush that she used or the dress that you don't remember her wearing is not giving up as much memory as something else that has more memories attached to it. And so finding the items around the edge that trigger less thought about her is a way to thin the herd without giving up all of the things that provide you great memory. Start there, because you'll find that as you let go of some of these smaller things that are less emotionally resonant, you will realize that how you feel about your mother and how you think about her and the things you remember about her won't change because you let go of the things. It's still all there for you. It's still in your mind. And the big pieces that remind you of her do more than an adequate job of helping you stay in touch with her and feel about her. And if the real issue is that you still need to process the loss more, maybe you're not through integrating the loss. And if that's true, then I recommend find a support group, go to a therapist, start talking to your friends. It's time to process and absorb that loss and make it part of your current reality in a way that's stronger for you, it's more supportive of you. And hopefully integrating that loss will allow these things to become less fraught as you let go of some of them. We know we're not going to let go of all, and letting go of one is not letting go of all. And so this isn't an all or nothing proposition here. You're just going to let go of the ones that are less tied to your mother for you than more. There's no point where you're going to go, okay, 100% of things related to mother are going out today. Like that's not what you're doing either. So when you start to feel panic, remind yourself, I'm not giving away everything that belonged to mother or that reminds me of mother. I'm only giving away this one thing because it's not as important to me as that piece of furniture over there, or that blanket, or this stuffed animal, or whatever, or this note that she wrote. I'm keeping the important one and I'm letting the less important one go.
I wish we had more time to talk about it, because grief is
it's a big one.
Big one that troubles an awful lot of people, but we are out of time. So I just need to say, if you're watching this on YouTube, we would love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook, or subscribe to our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please send us your questions, comments, and topic suggestions on YouTube, Facebook, or our website. I want to emphasize our website, because if you decide to do the tittle by sending us a message this week, there's a contact form that makes it really easy, and it sends it to both Gayle and me. And if you do not want us to share what you've said anywhere publicly, be sure you mention that in the text of your message, because we want to protect your privacy. But if you're willing to share, we will maybe answer some of the things that people have written to us next week. That's it. We'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks you guys for coming. We love you when you're here, and we hope that you can come back and tell us how it was to do something with a little bit of feelings this week. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.